So, hey everyone, welcome back to the series by College Dunia. Today we are moving a little and slightly away from the CAT and ZAT lines. We have another juggernaut of Indian B school system, the ISB Hyderabad. And today we have with us Ayush from ISB. And Ayush, welcome to the series, welcome to the show.
Okay, thank you so much, Chaitanya. Honored to be here.
Right. Thank you so much, Ayush. And before we move on, our pet question that we start with is, can you give us a brief profile background before you entered ISB?
So I was working with Cisco Systems before I joined ISB. I have an average work ex of about 2.9 years,
Okay.
Plus 6 months of internship. But according to ISB standards, that's not calculated in your full-time work experience.
Right.
I am a computer science graduate from BIT Vellore. And I actually continued in pretty much the same field after graduating. So I interned at Cisco, was a network engineer at Cisco. And for 2.5 years, I basically consulted a UK-based banking client on their contact center infrastructure. So yeah, that's pretty much my background.
Right. So Ayush, whenever a student hears about the ISB Institute, right, when he searches Google, right, the very first thing that comes up is the huge fee structure of ISB, right? Around 40 lakh of investment. So what is your take in that aspect?
So the way I look at the investment that you make in a college is you don't only factor in the upfront payment that you have to make to the college, you also factor in the opportunity cost.
Right.
Now, I would compare the ISB PGP according to my work experience with the 2-year MBA program at IIMs. Let's take Ahmedabad, Bangalore, Calcutta as an example. I suppose that the fees might be around 20-25 lakhs for the entire course. But what people usually miss to factor in is the second year opportunity cost. So after 1 year, you graduate from ISB and you start earning. Whereas in the 2 year, you graduate after 2 years. Right. So you lose the salary for the next year. Now I'll just take in the average pay of these colleges, it's around 30-35. So supposing in hand you get like about 20-25, like even that comes into your cost of getting that particular degree from that particular college. So in that way, ISB is actually a bit cheaper if you compare, because IIMs usually take factored in with the opportunity cost 50 lakh upward of fees. So yeah, I think upfront cost is a bit high, but the investment is pretty good. Like according to my experience, it has been really, really fascinating.
Right, perfect. So Ayush, can you please tell us about the difference between the 1-year MBA and 2-year MBA, right? So I heard from one of my friends that the courses you have in IIM ABC, they're very different from what you are taught in ISB. So can you please highlight those aspects as well?
So what I believe is like the 1-year MBA is typically designed for people who have some amount of work experience at least. It's very fruitful for people with 3 to 4 years of work experience. That's considered the sweet spot in ISB.
Right.
Whereas 2-year MBA program is usually for the freshers who graduate right out of college. I mean, people with work experience also go into these colleges, but like the curriculum is so that people with lesser work experience get into these 2-year. So one major difference that I found out is the 1-year curriculum is pretty fast paced. And it's very, very industry specific. So it's basically like people who have a work experience have a higher opportunity cost of staying out of their jobs. So it's just like a 1-year training program and you go back to the industry with whatever field you want to be in. So it's actually a fast-paced program than a 2-year MBA. You won't get the opportunity of having an internship, although we have something called an ELP year. I can explain it better on that later on. But you won't get an opportunity for an internship. You get placed within 6-7 months of joining the college itself.
Right.
So yeah, that's like these are one of the major differences between both.
Right. So Ayush, can you please tell us about the admission process of ISB?
For sure. So ISB usually checks you on your academic as well as leadership abilities. So that includes giving in your GRE or GMAT score. So people are well versed with GMAT being the criteria for ISB, but GRE and I was a GRE candidate. So GRE 2 was accepted for ISB admissions, PGP admissions. Right. So yeah, that's the first stage. Right. The second stage is wherein you essentially fill an application form. Now this application form is trying to monitor your past work experience, the kind of leadership abilities you've highlighted in your past work experiences, and basically try to factor out how you as a person are and how will you be able to fit in the ISB cohort. What extra do you bring into the ISB cohort?
Right.
So yeah, that's the second stage. So the second stage basically includes questions about your leadership abilities. There are 2 essays. Essays differ year by year, but broadly they are the same. So the first essay is essentially one leadership quality that you would, that you have, that you think is a differentiating factor. The second is essentially an SOP, the statement of purpose. So your next 5 or 10 year post PGP plan, your career goals, and ISB wants to know how much of a clarity do you have before joining the college as to what do you want to do later on in the future. The next section is essentially a form wherein you fill your extracurriculars, your awards and achievements. So awards both in the in your corporate as well as something that you might have in the extracurriculars. And yeah, that essentially forms the majority of the. There's a section for sponsorship as well, wherein you can get some amount of a scholarship if need be, either merit based or need based. And people who are vying for one can like fill that particular essay as well.
Right.
So yeah, that's mostly the application, how the application goes.
Right. So Ayush, did you appear for any CAT exam, for the CAT or XAT exam as well?
I did appear for the CAT and XAT. I did not take it very seriously. The reason being that I had plans of going abroad.
Okay.
And or either doing an MIM from abroad or doing a PGP from ISB. So I just like went in to give the CAT examination and the XAT examination with my GRE prep. But I kind of got a very good glimpse of how common these exams are as far as GRE GMAT is concerned. So the closest that one of these exams comes to GMAT is the XAT exam.
Okay.
Because when you give the GMAT, you should have a good sense of semantics and grammar, English grammar. And from what I could glean is that GMAT as XAT also tests you a lot on your grammatical skills. I think sentence completion in GMAT is equivalent to some critical reasoning is also there in GMAT, it's there in XAT. So these two examinations are very similar as far as it goes. Apart from that, I think if you are good with your CAT prep, you should be really good with your GRE prep at least.
Okay.
GRE quants is not a big deal. GRE verbal requires a good amount of vocabulary knowledge, but even that can be surmounted with a good amount of prep.
Right. So Ayush, so you talked about the SOP and the essay writing, right? So can you tell us how to approach those two things in our admission process?
Sure. So I think the first rule that you should follow is to follow a STAR approach.
Okay.
That will be used throughout your MBA career. This is throughout your application, not only in the essays, but also in other aspects of the application. The STAR approach is an approach in how to frame your sentences while writing anything. So it's situation, task, action, and then result. So you present a situation, you write whatever task was assigned to you, what action did you perform, and very, very importantly, what impact did that action generate?
Right.
So that's your result part. So even while approaching the essays, and there are 2 essays here, the first asks you about the leadership capabilities that you have that makes you a differentiator within the cohort. You essentially, I think there's a 400-word essay if I'm not wrong, and you start your first paragraph with introducing that particular ability. The second and third paragraphs are examples of you exhibiting those abilities either in the corporate or the real world. Right. And this exact thing has to be written in the STAR approach.
Right.
So that makes it very concise, crisp, and includes every point that you might want to give to the review committee. Right. And yeah, that's how you should go about it. Even in the SOP section, wherein they ask you about your 5 and short-term and long-term goals, if you try to bolster it with examples and present it in the STAR approach, it gives a lot of highlight to the interviewer as well. Right. So everything is in a clean, concise manner. One key point that I would have is have a lot of clarity in what you want to do post your ISB PGP.
Right.
Since it's a 1-year program, you might not get a good amount of time to experiment around.
Right.
Like it's a fast-paced program, and your previous work experience does matter a lot. I've seen people pivoting completely to a different niche altogether, but that's not very common. It goes. So, and that the exact clarity should also reflect in your goals as well. So, for example, I wanted to be a product manager. I highlighted how my past work experience helps me, what lessons I've gained, where are the gaps in my previous education or previous work experience, why I want to join specifically the ISB PGP. And this is my particular goal. I want to see myself right here as a product manager in a B2C company after 5 years, and maybe as a principal product or a head of products in the longer run. And every line of your essay should be very specific about you. So what you should try to avoid is generic sentences.
Okay.
So sentences like ISB has, the reason why you want to join ISB is because it has a huge campus or good level faculty. I mean, these are reasons that everyone else will give in the essay. The way you differentiate your essays is these are the courses that are offered in the institute. I believe that these are the gaps in my skill sets, and this is exactly how ISB will help me. So that's very specific to your case. These points cannot be copied by anyone else. Like it's very differentiating. So your essay gets differentiated in that particular manner, and the interviewer also knows that you have a good amount of clarity on what exactly you want to do when you come to the institute.
Yeah. So Ayush, I really want to know that how WorkX helps you in your placements at ISB, right? How much WorkX is a good WorkX in placements, and how much help you gain in your placement season?
So, I mean, everybody, to be honest, like every individual here in the college gets a good amount of placement. ISB has really good companies coming to the campus. But if you ask me what is the sweet spot, I would say it's again 3 to 4 years. People who come in through the YLP also get good opportunities. There's no dearth of that. So I had a 2.9 year work experience, but I got what I desired, like a product manager job in a B2C company. And that was not a major challenge, but it is a bit challenging for people who are not from that particular field. For example, if there's a doctor and they want to pivot to the product management space in a B2C company, just saying, not in a health tech or something else, they might have to put in a little bit of hard work in order to achieve that, but that's not impossible. That's the beauty of it. Yeah. So yeah, and a higher amount of work experience, from what I've seen, is people with 7-8 years plus work experience usually find it a bit difficult, but it's obviously not impossible. They do get what they want.
Right.
So it's a bit difficult for them in the placement process, but yeah, they do get what they want.
Right. So Ayush, you also mentioned about the YLP. So tell us everything about YLP. Right.
Sure. So YLP is this program wherein if you're in the 3rd or 4th year, which is the pre-final and the final year of your college, you can apply to the ISB YLP program. Wherein I think when I was in my college, the system was that they take a first essay and they filter out people from that particular round, and then follow the normal PGP round, wherein you have to submit 2 other essays, the SOP and the leadership utility essay, the entire application, and present a GMAT or a GRE score. So usually people who are YLPs tend to have a higher GMAT GRE score. That's also the expectation, because I mean, you're right out of college, you're in your college. So you get a good amount of time to prepare for these exams as compared to someone who's like worked 5-6 years in the industry.
Right.
So a higher GMAT score always helps. Secondly, these people have to complete. So they might get a seat reserved in ISB because they've applied to the institute and they got the results. But they have to complete 20 years of work experience, I suppose, after they graduate. So post your 20-year work experience, you come and join in the college.
Right. Perfect. So I want to correct you. I think Ayush, it's 20-month work experience, right?
20. Oh, I'm so sorry. 20.
No issues. Yeah. So Ayush, I really want to know that for how long the GMAT and GRE scores are valid for ISB?
I think I'm not very sure about ISB, but I think it follows the same routine as these examinations follow, which is the regular 5 year.
5 years. Right.
Yeah, I guess.
Right. So, Ayush, I really want to know that how many times did you appear for the GMAT exam?
I appeared actually for the GRE, since CAP was my strength. So I appeared twice. The first time I actually experienced an issue with my examination, and then that had to be redirected the second time. The good part about it was the deadline was on the 31st of January, and I applied for my GRE on 29th of January.
Right.
But yeah,
So, Ayush, how many times can you appear for the GRE/GMAT exam?
So you can appear any number of times, but 2 consecutive examinations have a certain set amount of durations. For example, if you're not satisfied with your initial score and you want to reappear for the examination, I think for GRE it is 21 days. That can be checked on the website, but there's a set amount of days during which you cannot give that examination, and it's not specific to ISB. It's universal for every other institute. I mean, ETS or.
So, Ayush, usually what happens is when a candidate appears for the GRE and GMAT exam, right? So their main focus is to definitely go abroad. So what is that one thing that ISB has that actually pulls those candidates towards them, apart from the placements and all of it?
Sure. So first, I think ISB faculty base has a huge amount of visiting faculties coming from these institutes abroad. So we have professors who've taught at Harvard, London Business School, Wharton, and a lot of the institutes in the US. So people usually want to spend less and get the reason why people move abroad is for the job opportunities, obviously,
Right.
and the good amount of teacher, like the academia that's there, right? But if you have that academia here in India with the lesser amount of money that you'll be spending, that is what attracts people to ISB. So we've had like most of our courses have been taught by teachers who are really accomplished in their fields.
Right.
CEOs of big companies, teachers in really good institutes. Like that's the faculty base here.
Right. So Ayush, what is the ideal cutoff for GRE or GMAT that a candidate should target?
So it depends actually. So here is where the bucket concept comes into picture. And ideally, a lot of these colleges follow this. So the first bucket, according to the Indian standards, is you are a general engineering male, which is a problem with JAT and
right.
JAT aspirants. So not the general part, if you're an engineering IT male, you're not considered a diversity candidate. There's a huge amount of competition there. People with really good GMAT, GRE scores apply. Right. So if you happen to be one of these, especially with someone who has a lesser work experience, you better have a 325, 330 plus GRE score.
Right.
As far as GMAT is concerned, I think it's considered hygiene to have a 700, 710 plus score. It's a bonus if you score in the 740, 760 plus range.
Right. So, So Ayush, talking about the GMAT and GRE exam, so can you provide us a little structure of what are the subjects in GRE and what kind of paper is a student may face for GRE or GMAT?
Sure. So I think both these examinations test you on the quantitative and the qualitative abilities. And as far as the course is concerned, it's your class 10th till class 10th level of mathematics. That CAT also, I suppose, tests. So I think both of these quantitative examinations are not as tough as the CAT, and engineers will not find CAT that tough too. So GRE quants is kind of easy for engineers to crack. For people with non-quantitative backgrounds, I would suggest that it just takes like a couple of months to master the quantitative part. As far as the verbal ability goes, so here is the division. In GRE, you need a good amount of vocabulary knowledge and the context in which that vocabulary is applied.
Right.
And there are a good amount of resources on the internet. So you've Barron's 800 word list, you've got Magoosh 1000 word list. You've got a good amount of word lists there, and then practice papers and so on. In GMAT, they usually judge you on the basis of your grammar. So you've got sentence on which your grammatical abilities will be tested. You've got reading comprehension, which is common in both GRE and GMAT, and then you've got I think CR, critical reasoning, which is also there in the ZAT examination.
Right.
Pretty simple. So yeah, this is where what they test you on. And then you have the AWS section wherein you have to write a couple of essays in both these exams. That can be covered like within the last week of the preparation as well. It's not a big deal.
Right. So Ayush, talking about the preparation, so how much time did it take you to actually prepare for the GRE exam?
I took 2 months, 1 month of dedicated preparation, and like. So I started reading about, I started learning vocabulary like since a year, but it doesn't take that much time. My preparation was very dispersed at the time, but I think 2 months of dedicated preparation will get you a good enough GRE score at least. And for GMAT, I would say 3 months. That's what I've heard from my friends.
Okay. So Ayush, what kind of approach you followed for your GRE exam?
So the first thing that I did was to consider the actual official guide as the Bible. You'll get a lot of resources, Magoosh, Manhattan, a lot of resources. These are good resources, but the actual examination is very, very similar to the official guide. So there's a set pattern of the examination, the way they ask the questions, the type of questions. It's very similar to the official guide. So I think that has to be considered as the Bible, the preliminary step to just get into the mindset of solving those questions. Later on, you can learn words from Barron's 800 word list. That's one resource. Magoosh's 1000 word list. And I think with this set of words, you're good to go.
Right.
Next, if you want to practice once, you can use the Manhattan 5-pound. Don't do verbal from there. I do not find the verbal very helpful. And then you can, if you want, if you're very keen on going into this GRE stuff, you can take a Mahoosh subscription.
Okay.
But even that is not of much help. What I would suggest is buy the ETS paid examinations. So there are 2 free examinations on the ETS website for GRE. They're very, very, very helpful.
Right.
The actual paper might be a bit similar to that. No other prep company has that amount of material there. And then you can buy the paid subscription as well. So I think that if you invest your money there, that's a good investment.
Right.
And that's how I went about it.
Right. So Ayush, you also talked about the ELP, right? Which is that ISB offers. So what is? Tell us about that also.
Sure. So ELP is the experiential learning program. So since it's a 1-year program, you do not have time to do an internship. So what the college offers you is pro bono consulting sessions with companies. So you've got a lot of good companies coming to ISB in every niche: consulting, product management, mostly into consulting, GenMan. And these companies have live projects going on. So they can basically have you as pro bono consultants, which is free consultants. You don't get paid for the work that you do in ELP, but you gain a good amount of experience if you work with these companies. It's kind of a mini internship, free, and that's what happens.
Right. So Ayush, after the admission process, I think there is also an interview round for ISB, right?
That's correct.
Right. So tell us about that. So how many panelists were there? How long was the interview, and what was the interview mainly? What did the interview mainly focused on?
Sure. So my interview panel had 2 people. So you have to understand that the people who usually take the interviews are ISB alums themselves.
Right.
This is very atypical of a B school, since IIMs have faculty members also. So it's not very usual to have faculty members here. These are mostly ISB alums. And the initial culling of students also is done through ISB alums and teachers and people from the admission committee. So what these people expect is short, crisp answers.
Okay.
But you should have a good clarity of whatever you've written on the application.
Right.
So whatever you've written on the application, you need to know it by heart and spirit. Each and every line of the application, you should be true to that. And like if asked a question on around your work experience or something on the application, you should be good enough to answer that particular part. I mean, the interview is not very grilling. I've heard bad interview experiences with the government colleges, like the teachers really grill you on general knowledge and stuff.
Right.
You usually won't get any general knowledge question unless you have like a quiz master written on your application or something.
Right.
So they usually test you on your situational abilities, your depth, your knowledge about whatever you want to do in the future. Mostly it's around why you want to get into this institute and why do you think this is helpful for you.
Right. So Ayush, I think we should wind up our interview here only, and I really want you that, do you have any final words for all the aspirants and GMAT, GRE who actually want to enter ISB? So any final words?
So I think don't take a lot of tension. I did during my preparation days. GRE, GMAT are not the kind of examinations that will haunt you in your nights. It's not IIT JEE for sure. So be chill about it, and just be true to yourself. Highlight whatever you've done in your work experience. Highlight it in a particular method that is very, crisp and clear to the interviewer.
Right.
And know exactly why you want to join the institute. So I think these are some of the tips.
Right. So Ayush, from institute, I also remember that we also have ISB Mohali, right? So what's up with that? So how is there any difference between the placements or anything like that?
Not at all. So ISB follows a one institute, 2 campuses policy. So neither of these campuses are above or below the other. And students are not divided on the basis of ranks or anything like that. This is a complete random distribution that happens.
Right.
So it's not like the top people are going to either Hyderabad or Mohali and vice versa. It's completely randomized. So the placements is common. During placement, the company will not know which campus you're from.
Okay.
So that does the job. Yeah, and the campus and the placements is it's a common placement scenario.
Right.
So you don't have to worry about the campus at all. Yeah, it's exactly the same thing. Professors fly here, professors fly there.
So Ayush, I would like to thank you for enlightening us with all the admission process and what happens behind the curtains and how to get into ISB actually. And thank you so much for doing this. And thank you so much for your time. And to all of viewers, we hope we were able to add some value to your preparation as well as your targets, your ISB target. And Ayush, thank you again. Thank you so much for doing this.